Hi there, Loreleila. This is the response to your video, Thinking Expertise and Authority. Some interesting stuff there. I think where I want to start is this. It's not exactly a distinction, but it's something you say about learning, whether it be self-learning or learning within the context of academia. See, I wouldn't make that distinction because I think all learning is self-learning. It's just that, academia or any kind of training program, personal tutor, whatever, all these systems can help you learn, but ultimately the learning has to come from yourself. I guess it's or maybe it's way out of order here, but I guess it's analogous in some ways to what I hear in about psychology. Obviously I'm not an expert in that at all, but you are, which is, certainly in therapeutic context they say the patient has to want to change. I don't know if that's valid or not, but there is an educational equivalent that is valid, which is that in order to learn, the student has to want to learn. The student isn't just a passive receptacle that you chuck a load of facts in. That's not how they work. It has to, educare means to lead out, so the student has to want to learn. So all learning is self-learning. Academia, or as I say, other kinds of training regimes, including the informal ones I would suggest, and ideally better informal ones, just aid that process. That's all we can ever do, really, I think. And that's enough. But it does kind of relate to some stuff to do with authority, because the biggest kind of obstacles to student learning within maybe not the biggest, but two of the biggest ones to obstacles to student learning in a university context, it seems to me, is one, as I say, the student not wanting to learn, which for the most part is because they think they already know everything. We all feel like that at times, don't we? And when we feel like we know everything, what incentive would we have to learn anything? You kind of have to feel a void, it seems to me. You have to either feel a void or be attracted to something out there that you want to examine. If you don't feel either that lack of knowledge in yourself or the lure of attractive knowledge out there, then you'd have no incentive to learn. So one of those things is students thinking they knew it all already. And as I say, we're all that kind of student of life sometimes, aren't we? The other obstacle is to do with this word authority, and it's a good word, I think, because authority, as I suggested in a previous video, has got a number of different meanings, doesn't it? Because we talk about authority in terms of political and economic power, but we also talk about authority in terms of knowledge, and they're actually quite different, aren't they? Because the way that authority works in a knowledge context is much more to do with trust, I think. If I read an academic book, for example, and I believe it, it's because I trust the author. And I trust the author because I know the kind of review systems that are in place to keep the guy honest. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So I trust that system. Sometimes I've been let down, but not very often. The system usually works well enough. So there's a sense of trust there. But that's very different to the other kind of authority, which is much more to do with control, isn't it? The authority of control. And I think when we talk about authority, we just blend these two together. And it's not entirely surprising, I think, because when we're kids, of course, when we go to primary school and on to secondary school, there is no separation. The source of our authority is the source of authority. The source of knowledge in the classroom is also the source of discipline in the classroom. Which is kind of weird, actually, when you think about it, isn't it? That the person, that man, that woman at the front of the class, who is the person you need to trust because they have information and can help you learn and help you turn learning into an enjoyable process. That is the same person who is also the disciplinarian who's trying to control your behaviour. And we've all been through that, so in that sense it's not entirely surprising that we have this Janus-faced relationship to authority. And it's very, very easy, when we talk about that term, to slip from one to the other, to slip from authority as the trust one has in a recognised, acknowledged expert, as I've referred to before, source of knowledge. and this other authority, which is the person who's telling you what to do. And again, so it's not helped, I think. And it's also not helped because, you know, political systems are like that too, aren't they? A lot of knowledge is controlled, is held and controlled by political systems also. But I think it is worth untangling them, pulling them apart. So yeah. The other thing we're talking about, which is to do with this phrase that I had about you think too much, you know, you think too much. And maybe you think I think too much, and you might be right, I don't know. But I do need to qualify it a wee bit, I think, because I'm talking about thinking. I've got quite a broad, my iris is quite open with regard to this term thinking. You know, because you know, thinking is something you do with your hands as well as your brain, as I see it. It's something you do with your body, as well as you do with your mind. It's something it's a proactive process. You're doing it. You know, you're moving things around. You're trying to shape things. You're taking things apart. This is thinking for me, as well as, of course, reading books, watching videos, watching the television, doing things with information. But it's also, as I say, doing things with your body. I mean, as you know, I try to do 3 things every day. I try to do an academic thing, for want of a better word, read a book, read a journal article, something like that, watch a documentary video of some kind. I try to do something creative every day, so make something, an object, do something with my hands. And I try to do something physical every day, go for a bike ride or a long walk or something. And I do think keeping those 3 things in play is really helpful. But yeah, one of the other things you say in relation to thinking, which I think is right, is that it's not so much you think too much that's the problem. It's thinking inefficiently or thinking inappropriately. I mean, I do some of that. I can feel the wheels spinning in my thoughts sometimes, or I can feel the wheels of my thought dropping into familiar ruts in the road, or I can sometimes feel my thinking just kind of flopping about. You know, just not doing anything really interesting. There's inefficient and inappropriate thinking as well. And I think having a weather eye on one's own processes and not letting them either ossify into kind of relics of previous thought, but also not letting them to evaporate into just kind of spurious speculation. But you know, keeping these things always in flight. You know, that's what I like. So yeah. That's pretty much it, I think. Thank you for the response there, Loreleila. A lot was said about that. Let me just see, because you did summing up, which I thought was good. Let me just see if I can sum up. Authority, I think, is important. I do think it's important. It's how we learn from one another. It's how we think together. But it doesn't require us to disentangle the authority that belongs to knowledge, which is a product of, for which one has to engage in trust, and that other authority, which is to do with power and control, for which one gets into relationships of obedience. And they are not the same thing. It's really important to keep them apart, despite the cultural forces that pull them together. So that's that. And this other thing is to do with thinking appropriately, inappropriately, deliberately inappropriately sometimes. Yeah, that'll do for now, I think.